The sound of the rotor blades was a blasphemy against the silence. It was a grinding, impossible noise that clawed its way up 47 floors of dead air and shattered the only rule left in the world. For 94 days, I had lived by that rule. Silence is armor. A dropped book, a cough, a floorboard that cried out under your weight. These were the things that brought them. The sound of that helicopter was a broadcast invitation to every echo in the loop. I stood back from the expansive glass of my corner office, watching the street below. I could already see them moving, flowing out from the shadows of stalled buses and storefronts. They were drawn to the noise, their jerky movements becoming more fluid and purposeful. The day the world changed, the sky was full of that sound. Helicopters crisscrossed the city, their searchlights cutting useless beams through the growing red mists that settled in the canyons between buildings. The noise then was a promise of rescue that never came. I remember the smell of burning tires and something sweet, like cooking meat. I remember my wife Elena pulling our daughter Lily away from the window, her hand covering Lily's eyes. We were on the 16th floor of our apartment then, watching the world bleed out. The last thing Lily said to me was that she was thirsty. I told her I would get her some water. Then the power went out, and the screaming from the hallway started. I sealed the door with my desk and never saw them again. The helicopters kept flying for 3 more days, then they too fell silent. This one was different. It was a military bird, a Black Hawk, and it was coming from my building. It moved with a confidence the world had lost. I watched it circle once, then it came to a hover just outside my window, its downdraft rattling the double-paned glass. A side door slid open, and a woman in a frayed business suit was there, flanked by 2 soldiers in clean tactical gear. She held a megaphone. "Michael Chen," her voice was amplified and tinny. "We are with the U.S. Continuity Coalition. We are here for you." I did not move. Survival had taught me that nothing comes without a cost. They rappelled onto the rooftop 2 floors above me. I heard their boots on the fire stairs a few minutes later, then a firm knock on my barricaded office door. I had spent weeks reinforcing it with heavy oak desks and steel filing cabinets. "Mr. Chen, my name is Sarah Rodriguez. We know you're in there. We're not here to harm you." I remained silent. I had 2 bottles of water left, a dozen protein bars, and a fire axe. I could wait them out, but the noise of their arrival had already signed my death warrant. The entire building would be swarming with echoes within the hour. "We have an offer for you," she said through the door. "We need a lawyer." I almost laughed. I walked to the door and spoke for the first time in what felt like months. My voice was a dry rasp. "The law is dead." "We're trying to bring it back," she replied. "We have Jacek Popo in custody." The name hit me like a physical blow. Jacek Popo, CEO of OmniGen, my firm's biggest client before the fall. The man who had patented Anansi's kiss. "He has orchestrated his own capture," she continued, her voice steady. "He is negotiating. He controls the only known agent that can neutralize the red mists, and he is willing to give it to us. But he has a condition. He wants a trial, an acquittal by the old world's laws. He needs legitimacy." I understood the game immediately. It was a corporate takeover on a global scale. Why me? "You're the best there is. We've been searching for you for weeks. Popo is demanding the best possible defense to make the acquittal look real. Your name was at the top of the list." "And what's my fee?" There was a pause. "The Helios Key." My breath caught. The Helios Key was a ghost story, a myth whispered among the powerful before the end. An unbreachable orbital platform, self-sustaining, a sanctuary in the sky where the world below was just a bad memory on a screen. Absolute security. You win the case, you defend Popo and get him his acquittal, and the key is yours, Sarah Rodriguez said. You lose, we leave you right here. The bunker doors in Cheyenne Mountain will be sealed. The choice was not a choice at all. It was a transaction. I started pulling the filing cabinets away from the door. "I accept," I said, my voice clearer now. "But I have one condition of my own. Name it." "I want my firm's entire off-site, encrypted case archive server. It has every file on OmniGen I ever worked on. I'll need it to build a proper defense." It was a lie, of course. The server had my insurance policy, a blackmail file buried so deep it would take me a week to find it. It held leverage against Popo, the coalition, Everyone. In this world, trust was a fatal liability. "It's done," she said. The helicopter ride to Cheyenne Mountain was a journey through my own personal hell. Below us, Chicago was a ruin. The red mists pooled in the streets like crimson blood in the city's arteries. I saw the echoes, thousands of them, moving through the concrete wasteland. I saw the rooftop of my old apartment building and turned away. The complex was a world away. It was all concrete and steel, lit by long fluorescent bulbs that gave the recycled air a pale, sterile quality. They stripped me, scanned me for infection, and gave me a gray jumpsuit. A guard showed me to a small, featureless room. My requested server was already there, a black metal box on a simple desk. Waiting for me on the bed was a suit bag. I unzipped it. Inside was a pristine Zegna suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. My armor. Putting it on felt like becoming myself again. The constant, subtle flexing in my left hand began, an old courtroom habit I thought I had lost. Sarah Rodriguez met me in a sterile briefing room. She looked different under the harsh lighting, more tired. Her own suit was worn at the cuffs, and her dark hair was pulled back in a severe functional bun. Her eyes, however, burned with a focused intensity. "The trial is a matter of perception," she explained, pushing a tablet across the table. "We are broadcasting the audio to every enclave and safe zone with a working receiver. It's to show them that order still exists, that the government is still functional." "You're selling them hope." "We're selling them a future," she countered. "My brother was a doctor. He stayed behind in DC to honor his oath. The law is the only oath we have left. It's the wall that separates us from them." I looked at her and saw a true believer. Her idealism was a vulnerability, a pressure point I could use if I needed to. I was not there to build a future. I was there to cash my ticket out. Before she left, I gestured to the guards in the hallway. Some of them wore the standard coalition uniform. Others wore sleeker, non-standard black gear with no insignias. "Who are they?" "Popo's men," she said, her voice tight. "His warden's security." It was another concession. He demanded they oversee his holding. Even as a prisoner, Popo was in control. They took me to him. The high-security holding area was not a cell. It was a well-appointed suite carved out of the rock, complete with a wood-paneled conference room built to look exactly like one from the old world. Jacek Popo was standing by a small bar, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. He was shorter than I expected, soft-bodied, with a face that looked warm and paternal. He wore a simple, dark turtleneck and trousers. He smiled as I entered. "Michael," he said, his voice calm and measured. "I'm so glad they found you. Please, have a seat." He offered me a glass. I took it. I had expected a scared man, a cornered executive. This was something else entirely. This was a man who knew the outcome was already decided. "I won't insult your intelligence by claiming I am innocent," he began, sitting opposite me. Anansi's kiss was ours. The zombification, however, was a most unfortunate and unforeseen side effect. He took a slow sip of his scotch. "This trial is necessary theater. It provides a bridge from the world that was to the world that will be, and you, Michael, are the architect of that bridge." He leaned forward, his eyes holding a serene, chilling certainty. "Choice, Mr. Chen. The illusion of freedom. That is the disease that killed the world. Humanity doesn't need choice, it needs certainty. Pax isn't the cure, it's a promise that tomorrow will be the same as today, a world without chaos." He slid a small data chip across the table. "Everything you need is on there. A complete defense strategy, every piece of evidence, every witness statement, all meticulously curated. You are not here to create, you are here to perform." I looked from the chip to his placid face. I was not his lawyer. I was a tool, an actor in his grand production. But the why didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the Helios Key. I picked up the chip. I'll follow the script. The trial began the next day. The courtroom was a perfect replica of a pre-fall federal court, a bubble of order in the heart of the apocalypse. The military judges sat stone-faced. Sarah Rodriguez sat at the prosecution's table, her jaw set. I took my place beside Jacek Popo. I was calm, my Zegna suit a perfect shell. The head judge called the proceedings to order. As I stood to make my opening statement, a ghost flickered in my mind. It was my daughter Lily's face, her eyes wide as she looked out the window at the falling world. The case for my own survival began, built on the foundation of a monumental lie. OmniGen initiated a full server wipe of all Anansi's Kisses research and communications, 24 hours before the first official case was declared, Fatima Jabjek said, her voice echoing slightly against the unfinished rock of the courtroom. This is not caution, it is conspiracy. She gestured to the main screen where lines of code and deletion logs glowed in a cold green. The military judges, 3 grim-faced officers in crisp uniforms, leaned forward. This was her opening salvo, the cornerstone of her entire case, and she presented it like a discovered murder weapon. I felt Jacek Popo's quiet gaze on me from the defendant's table, but I did not look at him. We had already discussed this exact moment. My path to Elysium was paved with her by the book tactics. I stood, and my own Zegna suit felt strange and stiff in the recycled air of the bunker. The prosecution sees a conspiracy because it serves their narrative, I began, my voice calm and measured. I see prudent corporate security. I walked towards the judges, keeping my hands loose at my sides, all except for the left one, which I felt clench into a fist behind my back. In a world of rampant corporate espionage, with a breakthrough therapy on the line that could save millions, OmniGen took steps to protect its intellectual property from theft. They were not hiding a crime, they were protecting a miracle. The logic was clean and simple, a beautiful legal instrument designed to turn their strongest evidence into a sign of corporate responsibility. I watched the argument land. The head judge, a general with a face like carved granite, settled back in his chair, his expression shifting from certainty to consideration. Fatima's jaw tightened. She knew I had not refuted her fact, I had simply given it a more palatable meaning, and in this courtroom, meaning was everything. A subtle, approving nod came from Popo. I felt it more than I saw it, a cold spot forming in my gut. Fatima's next move was to call her star witness. Dr. Eris Thorne was a virologist who looked like a man who had not slept since the world ended. He sat in the witness chair, his thin frame lost in the coalition-issued clothing. He swore under oath that he had warned Popo personally, that the zombification effect was a known, high-probability risk. He called it an acceptable margin of error, Thorne said, his voice cracking. He knew this could happen. When it was my turn, I did not approach the witness. I addressed the court from my table and requested access to my firm's digital archives. The transfer I had demanded as a condition of my service was my real weapon. A terminal flickered to life in front of me. I typed in the case file number from memory, OmniGen vs. Thorne, AR. Dr. Thorne, I began, my eyes on the screen. Is it not true that 3 years ago, OmniGen terminated your employment? That's irrelevant. I was a whistleblower. The record states you were terminated for falsifying data on a project related to viral protein folding, a project you were hoping would secure you a promotion. Is that correct? Fatima shot to her feet. Objection. This has no bearing on the current case. It speaks directly to the witness's credibility, I said without looking at her. The head judge waved a hand. Overruled. The witness will answer. Thorne deflated. They twisted my research. It was a clerical error. An error that you presented as a breakthrough, I continued, reading from the screen. An error you used to attack a colleague. An error for which you were professionally disgraced. It seems you have a history of twisting data to suit your personal narrative. I dismantled him over the next hour, using his own history, my own past work, to paint him as a bitter, vengeful man with a vendetta. It was a masterpiece of character assassination, and with every question, I felt another rivet in the hull of my transport to Elysium lock into place. Finally, the judges dismissed his testimony. As the guards led him away, Thorne stopped and locked his eyes on me. His face was a mask of desperate fury. "You fool," he screamed, his voice raw. "You don't understand what PAX is. They buried it under Project Chimera. The cure is the disease." The guards dragged him out. The court dismissed his outburst as the ranting of a broken man. but the name echoed in my mind. Project Chimera. It was a private joke between me and Popo's internal counsel from years ago, a reference to an unrelated intellectual property acquisition I had buried so deep in encrypted legal boilerplate it was functionally invisible. A routine job, a bit of corporate sleight of hand. I had created that file. That night, in the sterile quiet of my quarters, I could not shake his words. I logged into my archive and began to search for that old file, a ghost from a world that no longer existed. The trial continued. I watched Fatima grow more and more desperate as I systematically unraveled her case. She was trying to fight a war of rules against men who saw rules as suggestions. I saw her one evening in a communications alcove, her back to me, speaking in low, urgent tones into a secured channel. She was reaching out, breaking her own precious protocols, trading some of the coalition's dwindling supplies for information. A few days later, I delivered a devastating preliminary closing. I argued that Jacek Popo was not a monster but a scapegoat, a convenient target for a world desperate to blame someone, anyone, for a tragedy beyond comprehension. An acquittal was now a near certainty. After the session, Popo met my eyes across the courtroom. "Your seat is waiting, Kazakh," he said, his voice a paternal murmur. "Loyalty will define the new world." It was not a promise, it was a reminder of my leash. That thinly veiled threat sent a chill down my spine and drove me back to my terminal with a new ferocity. The next day, I noticed a change in Fatima. She had a small, encrypted data slate on her table, and while she could not introduce its contents, she looked at it like a drowning woman looks at a piece of driftwood. Her off-the-books gamble had paid off with something, a corrupted fragment of a shipping manifest showing neurosuppressants delivered to PAX facilities. At the same time, deep in the digital labyrinth of my own archives, my search algorithm finally pinged. I had found it. The file was labeled chimerafinal.zip. It was protected by a level of encryption I myself had designed. My own signature was on the digital lock. My victory was assured. My ticket to survival was punched. I could just let it go. I could walk away, board the transport, and disappear into the safety of Elysium, leaving the ghosts of the old world behind. But then I thought of Lily, my daughter. I remembered standing in her sunlit bedroom in Chicago, before the fall, before everything. She had asked me if it was ever okay to lie to make people feel better. I had given her some slick, morally flexible answer about social contracts, an answer a corporate lawyer would be proud of. The memory of that easy, confident lie now made my stomach turn. I spent the entire night before my final closing argument breaking my own encryption. My fingers flew across the keyboard, undoing the clever traps and dead ends I had so carefully constructed years ago. Just before dawn, the file opened. Inside was not legal boilerplate. It was an unredacted financial projection model. It treated the global pandemic not as a catastrophe, but as a total market conversion event. Beneath it was a single video file. I clicked play. The video showed a calm Jacek Popo addressing a small group of people in a sterile boardroom. He wore the same simple turtleneck. He smiled his warm, paternal smile. "Pax is not a cure," he said, his voice resonating with serene confidence. "It is a subscription to life itself. Anansi's kiss is the most successful market creation strategy in human history." I walked into the courtroom and the heavy blast doors sealed behind me with a quiet hiss of compressed air. The sound used to be reassuring, a reminder of the unbreachable walls between me and the end of the world, but now it felt like a tomb being shut. Fatima Jabjak sat at the prosecution's table, her shoulders slumped in a way that made her frayed suit seem even more worn. She was beaten. I had done that to her. Across the room, Jacek Popo watched me approach, a serene and paternal smile on his face. He saw the architect of his victory, the key to his new world. He was about to be proven right, just not in the way he imagined. I arranged my datapad on the defense table, the cool metal a familiar weight in my hands. Popo gave me a small, approving nod, the kind a king gives to a useful subject. I did not return it. I could feel my transport to Elysium being prepped, the engines warming, the flight crew running their final checks. My absolute security was only a few words away. I looked at the 3 military judges, their faces stern and impassive. Then I looked at the small camera lens that broadcast this trial to whatever remained of the world. My left hand, hidden by the table, began to flex. An old ghost of courtroom anxiety I thought I had buried long ago. I stood, and the room fell silent. My client, Jacek Popo, is not the monster you believe he is. I paused, letting the words hang in the filtered air. I met Popo's confident gaze. He smiled, a look of pure triumph. I turned my eyes to the main screen above the judges and pressed a key on my datapad. He is far, far worse. The video flooded the display. Popo's calm, recorded voice filled the courtroom, speaking of market creation and subscriptions to life. His face on the screen was exactly the same as his face in the defendant's chair, warm and reasonable as he detailed a plan for global enslavement. The real Popo's smile vanished, replaced by a mask of cold fury. I did not raise my voice or plead with the judges. I simply began to speak, my tone as level and precise as if I were dissecting a contract. I used his own financial models from the Chimera file. I used my own knowledge of the legal shells I had created for him. I deconstructed my entire defense, piece by painstaking piece, laying bare the truth I had been hired to conceal. I admitted to my own complicity in his past deceptions, presenting the evidence of his plan not as an accusation but as a confession. I was methodically, brilliantly, losing my own case. The courtroom exploded. The judges were on their feet, shouting for order that no one could provide. Popo's face was pure ice. From the gallery, men in civilian clothes who were not civilians at all drew concealed weapons. They were his wardens. They opened fire on the coalition guards, their shots precise and economical. The space became a kill box. Bullets tore through the dark wood paneling and the guards fell. 2 wardens grabbed Popo, dragging him from his chair and pulling him toward a section of wall that blew inward from an explosive charge planted on the other side. He did not struggle. Before he disappeared into the dust and smoke, he locked his eyes with mine. "All that skill," he said, his voice a flat, dead thing, "just to die with the rest of them. Your choice." Then he was gone. The firefight intensified as the remaining wardens covered their leader's escape. Bullets ripped through the air over my head. I stayed behind the heavy table, my path to Elysium now a burning wreck. As bullets tore through the room, a hand grabbed my arm. It was Fatima Jabjik. Her face was no longer defeated. It was forged into something hard and clear. The system she believed in was a smoking ruin around her, but her eyes held a new kind of fire. She looked at me, and I saw she understood everything. She shoved me hard toward a low door behind the judge's bench, a secure sub-level corridor I never knew existed. She saved me from Popo's men and from the coalition soldiers who would now see me as the worst kind of traitor. We emerged into the cold gray dawn of the ruined Colorado landscape. The sounds of distant echoes drifted on the thin mountain wind. I had nothing. My pass to Elysium was ash. The bunker was sealed to me forever. I was a target for the only 2 powers left on this broken earth. Fatima looked at me, not as a lawyer, but as the only other person who knew the entire truth. She moved to a hidden cache behind a loose rock, pulling out a military rifle. She worked the action, chambered a round, and handed it to me. I took the weapon. The cold steel felt impossibly heavy. I had traded a gilded cage for a war on the ground, a war not for humanity, but for the memory of a little girl who once asked me if it was ever okay to lie.